You've never been a politician. How can you win a fight against Pierre Poilievre?
Well, it's a couple. It starts. I think it starts with.
Mark Carney announced his official entry into the Liberal leadership race today out of Edmonton. He answered some of our questions, raised others, and let us know exactly how he plans to brand himself. He's just asking you to do one thing. Forget everything that he's said in the past.
Let's take a look.
Just as Pierre Poilievre's soundbites won't deliver for Canadians, we can't achieve our full potential with the ideas of the far left. They too often see government as the solution to every problem, with a reflex to spend and subsidize that just treats the symptoms of the problems, but doesn't cure the disease. We can't redistribute what we don't have, and we can't support the vulnerable in our society or defend this great country if we have a weak economy.
And we're off to the races. So, a couple things. He talks about the fact that, well, we can't implement the ideas of the far left. It's not going to work. What does that imply? Well, that implies that this Liberal government, and we all know this, but he's saying that the Liberal government has been a far left government for the last 10 years.
Well, I mean, look what they've done to the country.
Right. The odd thing is that this guy aligned himself with the far left Liberals over the last 10 years. How do we know that? Well, Mark Carney spoke for almost 45 minutes at the last Liberal convention back in 2021. He's a card-carrying Liberal member, and he has been joined at the hip and advising this government since around 2020. He even agreed to be this phantom, finance minister role for Justin Trudeau 6 or 7 months ago. So if you think the far left doesn't do a great job, why have you been a part of the far left for years? So that's the first thing. The other thing that he said that should raise red flags and sound off alarm bells all over the place is when he said this: we can't redistribute what we don't have. What does that mean, folks?
Well, if it's not in our possession, we can't redistribute it. So how do we get it into our possession?
Well, he's talking about wealth redistribution, which is a core tenet in what methodology?
Communism?
Communism, extreme socialism, Marxism, Leninism, whatever you want to call it. All of the different flavors of it. So that's a huge, huge red flag. And he just threw it out there. We can't redistribute what we don't have. You shouldn't be redistributing anything. Like, this is what the quote-unquote carbon tax was supposed to do. Rob from the rich and give to the poor. But it robbed from everybody and gave to the government. So, yeah, we're off to the races here. But we'll come back to his branding, don't you worry.
And I'm here to build the strongest economy for all Canadians. Yes, Canada needs change, but not just any change. We need change that works for people, and we've never needed it more. So if you remember one thing from what I say today, remember this: I am going to be completely focused on getting our economy back on track. And if you wonder why I can succeed where others have failed or will fall short, consider this. I've helped manage multiple crises, and I've helped save 2 economies. I know how business works, and I know how to make it work for you. I've worked around the world, but I'm grounded in what I learned right here in Edmonton. To be responsible, to be fair, to stay humble, to work together, and to never, ever give up.
And to be as inauthentic as possible. Let me check my notes there. Yep, as inauthentic as possible. So some people have talked about his performance here and said he did great. Some people have said that he came off as very charismatic. He came off as a businessman to me.
Yeah, he came off cold.
And he's saying, why can I do this and nobody else? Because I know how the economy works. And I know how business works. Ladies and gentlemen, we've identified the only businessman in the entire country. And he's sucks to be for the Conservatives because he didn't choose their party. He's choosing the Liberal Party to join. Really? Really?
Well, and I just think it's amusing how they think that the Conservatives' entire plan is just slogans. No, they haven't told you their platform yet because you'll steal half of it and then say that the other half is no good because that's what you guys always do. I mean, for the past 10 years, that's what you've done. And that's what's got us into this mess because you guys don't listen to the other side. You guys just went so far left that you didn't listen to anything that was center right or even center.
Well, and one thing that you will hear, and that's what I hear throughout this, is I have all the answers. I've done all this stuff. You little people don't understand any of this stuff. I understand it.
Yeah, he's already coming off very elitist. Just in the way he's carrying himself, he's going on like US talk shows. Like it seems very elitist and inorganic.
Well, and stay humble. Are you kidding me? Stay humble. So it was humble to arrange for yourself to go on The Daily Show, one of the most watched, nighttime TV shows on the left networks, and like play this game of cat and mouse and how do I say this parliamentary? Sit across from another man and have the man pump you up the whole time.
That's one way to say it.
Well, it's better than circles and other actions.
Yeah, thank you.
But this is the thing. Like that was just like an ego boost to you. There was no reason to go on there other than to try and say, hey, everybody, look who I am.
Well, and they're fashioning him already as Trudeau 2.0, where he's, going on these trendy shows and he's dressing snappy and he's talking in a certain way. And it just reminds me exactly of Trudeau, except Carney seems more dangerous to me.
Well, and what he doesn't talk about at all is listening to his team and building a team.
Or listening to Canadians. It's just, well, you guys are having a tough time and I know what's right for you.
Yeah, I will grace you with my presence and I will fix the country. Right? The hubris of him to say, oh, well, I helped fix the 2008 economy in Canada. And then, I was so great at that. I went over to England and did that. And
England's in a pretty rough shape right now, isn't it?
Well, it is. But the thing is like, you're going to tell me one guy at the central bank, you were responsible for fixing the whole thing? Now, some people may say, well, he's not saying he was responsible. He's saying he helped. That's like saying I helped. Now, he helped a lot more than I did. Right? But who are the people that actually executed that work? It was the government. It was a conservative, fiscally conscious government. And who put Carney there? Harper appointed him to be the governor of the Bank of Canada. So was it you or was it Harper? Pretty sure it was Harper. You played your role just like everybody else did. But let's get real here. But all I'm seeing is me, 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 me. Now I know he's trying to run for the Liberal leadership. He's trying, you have to like throw your resume out there, but you don't win people's loyalty by saying me, 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 me. And you don't say it by practicing Trudeau's speech methods of saying every other word.
I know I'm not the only Liberal in Canada who believes that the Prime Minister and his team let their attention wander from the economy too often.
So, right there, that was his polite way of saying the Liberal government screwed up. Well, you were technically a part of that government. You accepted the position. You've been advising this government for the last 4 years. But that doesn't count, right? You're trying to say that all the advice that they followed of yours, that was the good advice, and everything else, that went wrong, that's because they ignored your advice? Is this what you're trying to say? Spoiler alert, this is what he's trying to say because he actually references this later, but, we'll see if we can get to that clip. But I'm the outsider.
Not much of an outsider if you're working for the party now, are you? Not much of an outsider if you're providing advice to the Prime Minister, are you?
I won't lose focus. If you choose me as your leader, we will offer Canadians a clear choice in the next election. Experience versus incompetence. Plan versus slogan. Calm versus chaos.
Versus incompetence? Dude, have you seen the state of Canada? That is incompetence. That is negligence.
Well, and the interesting thing is it sounds like he was ready to jump in as finance minister and be a whole part of this mess. So now he's criticizing it?
Right.
Well, because it's to his advantage to criticize it now, because he's trying to run the party and show Canadians that you should vote for me because I'm going to do it differently now. Come on.
Well, and the other thing he says, slogans. Well, you just use slogans. And I love this criticism of Pierre. Well, all he has is slogans. It's either people haven't been listening or they're choosing not to listen. Pierre's actually said a lot over and above those slogans. He's talked about the different pillars in the Conservative platform. Fix the budget, build the homes, stop the crime, and axe the tax. Just in a different order. But he's talked about each one of those pillars and some things that he's going to do for each of those pillars. Is that the whole campaign? Is that the whole platform? No. But the teasers are just enough. So he has actually talked about individual things in each of those pillars that he's going to do. So no, they're not just slogans. And the great thing about Pierre is that he doesn't say me, 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 me. He references his team all the time.
And he references the people that he talks to. You can hear him in the House of Commons speaking about, I met this individual at a rally in Winnipeg and this is what I was told and this is what we're going to do to fix it. He puts the people first and that's how it should be.
Right. I haven't heard a reference to like hardworking Canadians once. And there's a lot that was cut out of this. All he really says is he refers to Canadians like they're the plebs. Like they're the commoners. Like they're the
serfs.
The serfs. Well,
don't worry, serfs. I'll take care of you.
We need an economy that works for all Canadians. Okay. Brilliant. Brilliant. That's a great idea. Get the economy to work for all Canadians. You don't understand the plight of Canadians. You really don't.
We have to give Canadians that choice because let's face it, even if Donald Trump and the threat he brings didn't exist, we'd still have big problems. our growth has been too slow. People's wages are too low. Necessities like groceries and rent are too expensive for too many. The federal government spends too much, but it invests too little. Middle-class taxes are too high. And we're not yet ready to make the AI revolution and the energy transition work for all Canadians. So in the coming days and weeks, I'll propose some big changes and some bold new ideas. And I recognize, I understand, that's not how politics is done these days, when lifelong politicians rely on slogans and slander and sound bites. But once again, these are not ordinary times. Let me tell you one other thing. In these times, sending Pierre Poilievre to negotiate with Donald Trump is the worst possible idea. I can think of one other politician I might not send.
That was directed at Danielle Smith, was it not?
It was either directed at Danielle Smith or it was directed at Jagmeet Singh. It's hard to know, but it's probably Danielle Smith. But here's the thing. Didn't he just say, literally 10 seconds earlier, well, I'm different. I'm a different type of politician. I don't believe in slogans and slander. Well, what did you just do then?
Well, if you don't say their name, maybe it's not slander. I don't know.
Doesn't count. But this is the thing. Like, the hypocrisy is...
Oh, I know. I'm just saying, maybe, in his head, that's the logic. Well, if I don't call them out by name, it's okay.
Or he has a memory of a goldfish because, like, he's literally... Like, okay, sure. That's great. But now you see how he's going to be branding himself. I'm the outsider. I'm not your typical politician. So I don't know how to play the politicians' games. And politicians don't propose big ideas. I do, because I'm different.
Because I'm not a politician. Then why are you applying for the top political job in this country?
Oh, well, because he's the only one that can fix it. And, he keeps talking about, I'm going to work hard and we're going to make things better for Canadians and we're going to focus on them and the Conservatives can focus on other people. This sounds really familiar.
Do you know, this is infuriating me so much. Dare I say it? I hope Freeland wins.
Well, this is essentially, like, if you recall, this was what Trudeau was saying before he won. He was saying almost the exact same things. But the difference is Carney, the Liberal government caused all this crap.
And he wants to hop onto that train. Like, I don't understand it.
So, like, unless you think Canadians are completely stupid, it's like, oh, well, don't remember that Liberal government.
Well, they do, though. They absolutely think that we're all morons and that, we have some guy who's not Trudeau. Let's all vote for him.
He's like,
he's not Trudeau. Oh my gosh, everything's magically going to be fixed. Like,
we screwed up the first, 3 times.
Same ministers, same MPs running in those ridings. The only thing that's changed is the captain of the ship, and it hasn't even changed yet.
But the 4th time's the charm, everybody. You just have to trust us. So that's the way he's trying to brand himself. Now, if you noticed, Carney has his name on his podium, and then he probably paid some like high price brand guy, thousands of dollars to create that logo for him. The question is, did he get his money's worth? And if you're wondering why I'm saying that, let's take a look. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mark Carney's logo. So he has a little M with a maple leaf in the middle. Mark Carney. Okay, fine. Well, it's very, very interesting and maybe fitting because there's another logo that looks very, very similar to this. That logo belongs to meticulously. Look at that. It's a red M with a white maple leaf in it. It's just a little angled, but it's the same logo nonetheless. Here's both of them side by side.
It's extremely similar. Like, I'm obviously not an expert in copyright law, but I wonder if you brought that to a court of law, if they would say, no, that's not different enough to count as its own unique entity, that it would infringe some sort of copyright. It really does make me wonder.
Now, Mark Carney is a banker, right? Well, this is kind of crazy. Like, you can't make this stuff up, because MetCredit is literally a collections agency. So just as the government and the Liberals love to collect taxes, now their new guy has chosen a logo as his brand, which matches a collections agency that brands itself as Canada's top performing collection agency.
Yikes.
Awkward. Like, are you kidding me? Nobody looked into this. Nobody checked to see, is there anything else similar out there like this? Oh, dang, a collections agency? That's not a great look to associate.
Yeah, I really hope he didn't pay too much money for that logo.
Like, come on, man. Like, give me a break. Anyways, okay, so Mark Carney, he's an outsider. He's not a politician. He has bold, hypocritical ideas that he forgets from one moment to the next.
Wait, you need to back up, because he's not an outsider. He claims to be an outsider, but
Well,
he's
he
not
claims.
actually an outsider. He's been helping this government since 2020.
My mistake. He claims to be an outsider.
That's right.
And he's going to take all your money, because what is the government under the Liberals except one big collections agency? So, ladies and gentlemen, Mark Carney. The man with the plan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Carney. Ashley Burke, CBC News. You said this week that you're an outsider, but you've been offering the Liberals support advice for years. How can you explain how you're any different?
Oh, well, there's a pretty big difference between being a member of the cabinet, a member of the caucus, the prime minister himself, and being someone who occasionally their advice is asked. Look, the prime minister of the United Kingdom, the president of France, other leaders ask for my advice from time to time. I've provided advice to this government. I'm not going to reveal which advice has been followed and which hasn't. And the vast majority of the decisions that the government has taken over the years, I've found out when they were announced. That's different for those who are, of course, members of cabinet and the caucus.
So, I'll tell you what the difference is. It's because I say so. And then, again, when you're shooting from the hip, you can't hide. You cannot hide who you are. What does he immediately retreat to? Oh, the president of France calls me for advice. Prime Minister of UK calls me for advice. All the world leaders call me for advice. That's just who I am. Wow.
Is there not democratic uncertainty in those countries right now? Like, their political, I guess the parties that they've elected are not really doing a good job, and the populace is upset.
Right? So,
Like,
are we to interpret that every single country you've given advice to is in political turmoil? That's basically what this sounds like. Have they stopped calling you? They should.
You've never been a politician. How can you win a fight against Pierre Poilievre?
Well, it's a couple. It starts. I think it starts with the fact that these aren't normal times, and part of the reason how we've ended up in these times is because of a certain type of politician perfecting their art, which is focused on slogans, slander, sound bites.
All right, we didn't rehearse this because this question just came to me. So, Tanya, what's your definition of a slogan?
it's, I don't know. You think of like some popular brands, for example, like McDonald's. What's their slogan? I'm loving it. What's Nike's slogan? Just do it. Right? So it's like a short phrase that kind of describes the brand.
And what makes that slogan, stick? You repeat it
I think
over
there's
and
lots of
over
things.
again.
Yeah, there's repetition, but it also has to kind of like roll off the tongue. If you had like a really long and complicated slogan, it's probably not going to work.
So alliteration is probably
Yeah.
a good thing. So notice that this is like the third or fourth time that Mark Carney has said slogans, slander, and sound bites.
It's starting to sound a bit like a slogan.
Sounds like a slogan to
Don't you
me
think?
that he's using against Pierre Poilievre. So, yeah, I don't use slogans, but I'm going to use a slogan to illustrate that I don't use slogans. Got it. Ladies and gentlemen, he's not even an hour in to being a candidate, let alone the prime minister, and the hypocrisy is already oozing out.
Attacking the institutions at the core of our economies, exploiting vulnerabilities for other ends. And we can't afford that. We can't afford that. First off, it's not Canadian. It's not the way we are. But secondly, we're in a crisis with an exclamation point put by the Trump tariffs, but we have deeper underlying problems which require us, in my judgment, as an outsider, as someone who's not been a lifelong politician, as someone who's gained tremendous experience because of where I started here, is where I've gained that experience. In my judgment, it's a time to come together and to build as a country. You can't do that when you're insulting more than half of it.
Okay. So...
Was that a dig at Trudeau?
No, because the question was, how can you beat Pierre Poilievre? At no point have I heard Pierre Poilievre insult half the country.
No, I've heard our prime minister do it. Our old prime minister. You know, the one that's the interim prime minister right now.
Well, and he didn't even care what the percentages were. He just insulted everybody who doesn't agree with him. If you didn't agree with him, you're a racist and you're a misogynist.
Well, and that's how the left does it, right? They shame you into submission.
Right.
That's why cancel culture is a thing.
And he's crapping on Pierre because Pierre is calling out the problems in the country. So what? You're not allowed to say that there's corrupt mayors. You're not allowed to say that the municipalities are overbloated with bureaucracy. You're not allowed to say that the government is overbloated with bureaucracy. You're not allowed to say that the Liberal government has been spending with reckless abandon on all of these institutions with nothing to show for it. And the only thing that they have to show for it is Canadians can't affording homes. They're living in tents. They're freezing to death. They can't afford food.
There's fires like every other day here in Hamilton. You hear of an encampment fire. It's horrific because like those are people's lives.
So again, the first step in fixing a problem is acknowledging that you have one. Because even in this speech, Carney tried to say, well, Canada's not broken. It's the best country in the world, but we can make it better.
Well, and if you do like any kind of 12-step program, that is the first step, is to acknowledge that you have a problem and seek help.
Now, he's implying that all Pierre is doing is complaining and crapping on the country. But if you listen to any of Pierre's speeches, he talks about all the problems. And then he says, how are we going to fix them?
If you've ever been to one of his rallies, you hear him. He says, you know, this is broken since Trudeau took over. This is broken. There's problems here, but we're going to fix it. The Conservatives are going to fix it by being fiscally responsible, by axing the tax. They're also going to axe the capital gains tax increase. That was news today. They're going to get tough on crime again because we give our criminals way too much leeway. Like, these are just some of the things that you can hear Pierre say in his speeches, some of the solutions that the Conservatives are going to offer.
Right. There's a reason why Canadians have this feeling of hope at the end of all of Pierre's speeches. And it's certainly not because he's just telling you everything's broken.
Look, I've said for a long time that if you were going to take out the carbon tax, you should replace it with something that is at least, if not more, effective. And by effective, it's not just having the same impact in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but it's making our companies more competitive, it's creating jobs, it's ensuring that Canadian households are made whole in terms of their finances. Because perception may be that it takes out more than the rebate provides, but reality is different, and Canadians will miss that money. So you need a comprehensive approach You need a comprehensive plan, not just a soundbite that fits on a lectern. And that, again, is the difference between me and some others. I don't do a little leak. I don't do a soundbite. I do a comprehensive plan that addresses all the aspects, and you'll see that in the coming week.
Well, you have to put out a plan because you're running for the leader, guy. If you're the leader of the opposition, you don't put out your full platform, your election platform, until there's, oh, what's that E word again?
An election called.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You're
Yeah.
not going to give away your whole platform for everybody else to pilfer like Jagmeet Singh does. The worst political strategist in the history of political strategists.
Well, now I find it interesting because Pierre's been running on Axe the Tax for a very long time. And now you hear liberals who are in this leadership race, like Mark Carney, like Chrystia Freeland, saying, no, we need to axe the tax. We need to get rid of the consumer carbon tax.
Right. You know, the one that Chrystia Freeland has voted for, I don't know how many times, the one that the Liberal Party refused to buckle on for 10 years, the one that all of these MPs supported up until the very end. And now all of a sudden, oh, well, you know, maybe it's time. Like even Mark Carney, back in 2021, he was at the Liberal Convention and he was talking about the fact that Canada has a serious and effective carbon tax. They were brave enough to do it. We'll be going over that video later this week. But sorry, you don't get to just turn around and say, well, you know, we need to do something different. And notice he doesn't intend on giving our money back to us, folks. Because he says, well, we still need to replace that money the Canadians are getting. Well, here's a way to replace it. Don't take it from us in the first place.
Back to sort of how this all began, this leadership process all began. Wondering, you know, did Prime Minister Trudeau ask you to replace Chrystia Freeland as finance minister last month?
Well, what the Prime Minister looked to do and was to bring together, let's put the context first. We have the crisis which starts with President Trump's threat, which still hangs over us, this threat of the 25% tariffs. And in response to that crisis, the Prime Minister looked to reinforce his team to address it. So he approached me, he approached some other people. They can speak for themselves. Some of it's in the media, but and the intention was to reinforce the team, not change the team, if you will.
So the answer to that question is obviously, yeah. He did offer me the position of finance minister, and he was going to fire the lady that I'm the godfather of her kid.
No, he was going to reshuffle the cabinet, right?
Well,
He wanted her to remain deputy prime minister. He did not want this mess where he would have to step down, become the interim prime minister, prorogue parliament, and then have a leadership race all before March 26th.
You're a senior executive at Brookfield, and yet your compensation has not been disclosed. Can you tell us what your compensation over the past 3 years has been and how you will manage potential conflicts of interest as you enter politics?
Okay, very simple. I am no longer a senior executive at Brookfield. I am no longer a senior executive at Bloomberg. I am no longer on the board of Stripe. I am no longer on the board of PIMCO. I am no longer on the board of any of my commercial activities. I am no longer the UN Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance. So all of those roles, I resigned today. Okay, just to be clear, I resigned all my roles, cut all my ties. I am all in. I am all in this fight because it is so fundamentally important. And what I'm bringing from those experiences and the previous experiences, Bank of Canada, Bank of England, fighting the financial crisis, helping to fix the global system, what I'm bringing from those is to help Canada through this immediate crisis, but really to build the strongest economy in the G7. Thank you very much.
Do you have lingering conflicts of interest that you will have to manage?
Oh, look, I mean, we have a very robust, to be clear, we have a very robust conflict of interest system.
oh yeah, we've seen how effective that is.
Well, okay, let's explain again. The job of the ethics commissioner is upon an individual being either elected as an MP or appointed to cabinet, or in this case, appointed as the prime minister, because Mark Carney could potentially become the prime minister without being elected as an MP first. But point being, as soon as he's appointed as the prime minister, if he is indeed the successful candidate, then he has 60 days to report to the ethics commissioner all of his holdings, anything that is $10,000 or more. That could even include like his kid's college fund, and then anything that the ethics commissioner deems as a conflict of interest will then be dealt with. Either Carney would have to divest himself of those things, or he'd have to put them in a blind trust, something so that he does not have direct control over any shares or accounts.
Well, and I've been thinking about something that he said here. So this is a guy who is a senior executive at global conglomerates, and he's been on multiple boards at the same time. And he's held multiple senior executive positions at the same time, by the sounds of it. And he's talking about all the experience he has to come in. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's a big piece of experience that I firmly believe that politicians need to gain before they jump from being a CEO or a vice president or any of that C-level suite position directly into being the prime minister. Never mind being an MP, but the prime minister. And there's a big difference between that. In the private sector, when you're a VP, when you're a CEO, there is no democracy. There is no consensus. It's you do what I say or you're fired, and I don't have to listen to you. You're one of the little people. You're one of the workers. Your job is to make me money. So you will do that, or I have no use for you. You are a number. So usually the path into politics is one of those people runs as an MP, understands what it means to actually earn the trust of Canadians, how to represent Canadians, and then if you do that well, then you are utilized within the party for other positions, and then you're brought up to the top. Even Trudeau didn't jump into being a prime minister right away.
No, he was leader of the opposition for a little while.
He was leader of the opposition. He was basically just an MP, and, he structured his party. He did what he did. But he had no power over the country.
I think that brings up a really good point, because as a CIO or CEO or C-suite anything, you're used to being the one at the top. You're used to being the one in charge, giving the direction.
Everyone serves you.
Right. As the prime minister, you are a servant to all Canadians.
Yeah, you're supposed to be the bottom of that pyramid. And all Canadians are supposed to be on the top. It's a reverse pyramid. Whereas he's coming from that period being clicked upside down.
So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
Right. And if you noticed, when he was asked about his compensation, he let it slip. He let his face slip for just a second.
Well, and he avoided the question entirely.
Oh, yeah. He was saying, and then he corrected himself very quick, but it was there. It was there. And yes, Mr. Carney, it matters. And why does it matter? Because Canadians need to know who paid you and where that money came from. Because that goes into the evaluation of your conflict of interests. And it also goes into what contracts is your government going to potentially be handing out after you get to be prime minister, if you get to be prime minister. So there's a lot of questions that this goes into. But sure, you may know the economy, you may know finance. That doesn't mean you are going to be a great prime minister.
Well, hopefully he'll only be prime minister for a few weeks.